Do intro now. Hello and welcome to the Tifo Football podcast. Joe Devine is still away. So like a fully cooked turkey under a bin in Streets of Rage. I was told it's actually a chicken. I think someone told me that recently.
Oh.
Might have been a chicken. Makes more sense than a turkey unless it's a festive themed Streets of Rage. But why would there be rage in the streets of Christmas time? Anyway, I am JJ Bull and I am in the host chair again. Sorry about that. Joining me today is Kaya Kaynak.
Left foot, right foot, devastating.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's what they say about you.
Well,
on the streets.
yes.
Hiding in the bins.
Yeah, always.
And freeing himself from the scattergram for the duration of this recording at least. It's 1/3 of the Data Boys, Dr. Mark Carey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I must say, for all that I have done in my career, the scattergram that we did many a year ago, actually, has been the main thing that's followed me around.
Is that right?
It's the only time I've been recognised, only once, and it was in a chip shop, and they just said, I'm glad to see you're at the scattergram. It's all you're doing, JJ.
Well, sometimes things I do are all right. We can talk about the form. In today's show, we talk about the form of the Premier League title contenders and who's already won the league. What are our final forms? Form in general. Good form, normal form, philosophy. Then we up the tempo and talk about tempo. Which leagues are the fastest? Which are the slowest? Can you work it out? You just have to think about that now. It's a fun game we play later on. We find out. Then I briefly went sideways and asked, are there more ghosts now than there were in the 70s? Actually, apparently there was more in the 70s and the 80s. There were more reports of it then. A lot more paranormal reports. Good, isn't it? Mark doesn't care about the ghosts.
It's good.
Have
It's all good
expected
stuff.
ghosts fallen over the decades. This prompts a chilling childhood memory for Kaya. A very well told story, might I add.
Bad.
Mark and Kaya discovered that they were at the same gig last night. That was a good
That was nice.
diversion.
Yeah.
Steve got tired of the music chat. Then we started talking about feet and being able to play with both feet. And we play a game. And that is the show. What a show for you to enjoy forever. Much like a ghost, if it lived in your house.
Yeah. It feels like I'm sat next to an empty chair, which feels like where the ghost would sit.
That
the
chair's
Tifo
not
ghost.
empty, mate. That chair's not been empty this whole
What?
episode.
Yeah, we talking about that's the third guest.
What?
His name is Mr. Ghost. That's the show. Where else to begin then than saying what other people are saying, which is that the Premier League has already been decided. Arsenal have won it because they're so far ahead. It's early in the season, yes, but many people are talking about, can anyone get close to Arsenal? And we're going to add fuel to that fire. Arsenal only have Bournemouth, Tottenham and Sunderland in their wing mirrors, writes producer Steve. Where predicted rivals Man City and Liverpool are 6 and 7 points behind the Gunners respectively. I'd like to add, I don't think it's done yet. But most people would say that Arsenal are in fine form at the moment, because we're going to talk about what form actually is, because Mark Carey knows about form. But do you know about Greek philosophers?
I do not.
You don't know anything about Greek philosophers?
Enlighten me.
I don't believe you don't know anything about Greek philosophers.
I know about Greek yogurt.
That's not the same.
Okay. Sorry.
Philosophers are people who said things that you remember. And one is called Plato, and he describes the forms as the timeless, absolute, non-physical and unchangeable essences of all things. That's what he means, Mark.
And that links with Liverpool's good form and
I'm going to ask, are you in your final form?
Ooh, that's a good question. We could easily do 10 minutes on that.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that I'm in my final
We're out of
form.
time. We're going to talk instead about what are your conclusions about the form of the title contenders already?
Well, with this analysis piece that I did, I basically looked at form. And when we're talking about form, we're obviously thinking of the most recent performances, or more importantly, the most recent results. And to quickly give an update as to kind of how I did this sort of analysis, it was very, very simple. I took a 5-game rolling average of the team's points per game. I then looked at the season's average from that point, or 38 games back. And if the 5-game average was a third below the season average for the respective team, if that makes sense, then they were in poor form. So it's always relative to where the team was. So if, let's say that Manchester City were at 3 points per game, of course they weren't this time last season, then they basically have a run of poor performances across a short period, and then that significantly lowers their average within a short time frame, then they are in poor form.
If you win 5 games in a row, are you in form?
you're in good form. But you've got to make sure that if you are Arsenal, this is a really good example actually, because it leads me neatly into that if you're Arsenal and you're doing well as they are, that given this analysis that I've done, they're actually not necessarily in what I am calling quote unquote good form, because they've been so consistently good in the results that they've picked up in recent months and years, really.
Yeah.
Such that you compare that with Manchester City, especially last season when they went on a really terrible run of form where they just dropped off a cliff with their results. Liverpool at the moment, where compared to last season, title-winning form, they've lost 4 on the bounce. That has shown a drop in their points per game, and they are, statistically speaking, and obviously in bad form at the moment.
So you're saying Arsenal aren't in good form?
This is like on a technicality. Arsenal are have been consistent over a long period and are showing title-winning credentials. But I think that the reason we're talking about form is because it's more of a short-term thing.
So you're saying they haven't reached their final form?
Oh, this is so hard to
saying they're good, but they're not in good form, if that makes sense.
Because their form has been so consistent.
Yes.
Their form is consistent.
Yeah.
It's neither good, bad, or...
Their form is good, but they're not in good form at the minute.
Yeah, I'd go with that.
Would that be fair?
I'd go with that.
Okay,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like that's something that people maybe misunderstood when the piece came out, right? In terms of the response, in the sense that people saw not good form for an Arsenal team who have won lots of games. They thought, wow, what's going on here? When, yeah, in reality, that was what you were explaining.
It's a credit to them, is the point, really.
It's a compliment, for sure.
I know
so you're saying they could be even better?
No, not necessarily. I know you had a laugh about this a couple of days ago, that I've titled them in normal form, but normal form for them because they've across a long period.
That makes sense to me. I like that.
They've rarely dipped in form. If you flip it on its head, they've rarely dipped in form across recent seasons. You'd be able to explain better, Kai, was at the end of the 22-23 season where they just dropped off, just sort of cost them the title in the end.
They lost one game and drew one game, I think, in the entirety of the second half of the season, which I think it was 23-24.
Sorry, yes.
And in the entirety of the 24 bit of that season, they lost one to Aston Villa and drew another one to Manchester City. And yeah, apart from that, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
But which I suppose is why they'd be considered in normal form now. It's the classic like Warrior Trophy thing that you always get for Arsenal. It's like, oh yeah, great, you've got the most calendar year points, but in this instance, it works out pretty well.
So Arsenal are in normal form. I get that bit.
Yeah.
Liverpool are in bad form.
Yes.
So we're trying to work out who is the title contenders or Arsenal so far ahead. And the reason they might be is because they're in normal form, but they're really good. So when they hit good form, they'll be more good.
Yeah, and to be fair, like this piece was designed to be kind of a bit of fun, and it's outcome based. It's only based on points rather than typically, and I said it in the piece, you'd normally look at the underlying numbers to see if the expected goal difference suggests that if someone is maybe losing across a short period of time, that what they're doing in terms of process will kind of pull them out of a bit of bad form in terms of performance more so than results. But the idea here is that, Arsenal aren't blowing hot and cold. There's not too much of an ebb and flow. They are just being really consistent. Liverpool at the moment, this is why I think it's really important to speak in relative terms. At the time, Liverpool had lost 3 on the bounce. Fulham had also lost 3 on the bounce at that point as well. Both of them actually since lost 4 on the bounce. But Liverpool was statistically in bad form because it was relative to title winning sort of points per game that they were picking up. Fulham were actually, by this definition, in normal form because it was kind of what was to be expected compared with last season.
It's kind of like, because it's 38 games is your baseline reference point to this, right? And it's basically, as with all good statistical analysis, it informs your expectations of a side. So, for example, Spurs are in good form this season, aren't they? But they had such a bad season last season that
they could only improve.
Precisely. Yeah. So it's like all good stats analysis. It kind of informs and gives evidence to one's expectations. So Liverpool are doing badly because we have higher expectations of them than say Fulham.
That's producer Steve with the answers. I like that. So are there any teams that are based on this, the way you've done this, are there any teams that have surprised you that pop out of it? I'm thinking like Bournemouth are really high up in the league just now, so you think they're in really good form. I feel like Crystal Palace are doing really well, but maybe they're not. How about those?
Well, was it you and I spoke about it recently in terms of where Crystal Palace actually are this season? Everyone's saying that they are, if not the team to beat them, they've been really impressive, which they have. They are still 10th. And the thing is, this is a separate piece that I've done in the past where at this stage of the season, the table does start to take shape, but it's not wholly representative of how things are going to be come the end of the season. But Bournemouth are second at the moment, aren't they? 9 games played, 18 points, which you would imagine, Sunderland are fourth, by the way, you would imagine that wouldn't necessarily be wholly sustainable. Without confusing things further in this form thing, the Bournemouth actually aren't necessarily in good form by this. And if you look back at the past 5 games for Bournemouth, they're doing really well. They are unbeaten, 3 draws and 2 wins. But actually, if you look at the sort of volume of points that they're picking up last season, they were really strong for quite a lot of the season, which is why you compare it across the whole season. They had a bit of a drop-off towards the end of last season. You wonder whether tactically that's because of the intensity that they play with and they just couldn't sustain it for a long period. But again, it's credit to where Bournemouth are, that this isn't just, we are surprised that Bournemouth are second here, but it's not wholly surprising compared to if it was maybe 2 years ago and Bournemouth were there. You'd be like, well, that's not sustainable. They are just on a really hot streak, a real purple patch. Now it's actually like, well, is there the conversations are, is there a genuine chance that Bournemouth might at least make a European spot, wherever that may be?
Yeah. I'm just enjoying the fact that we're talking positively about Bournemouth while John McKenzie isn't here. It's a rarity, and I think he will be enjoying, if he is listening back to this. Hi, John. We're talking about Bournemouth and you're not here.
How about with Arsenal again? So, like one of the things we're talking about with Arsenal, and we'll link to this in a minute with set pieces and things like that as well. So one of the reasons that maybe they're in good form is because they're not having to rely, like if you rely on individual players, you can't always do that because players naturally are just inconsistent, I think probably just by human nature. So that's one thing. So if you're a manager, what you probably want to do is create systems that allow you to eliminate the variance that is created by inconsistency and therefore put yourself in form always rather than being in good or bad form. And focusing on that is probably a good way to do that.
Yeah, and maximising control where you can. And it's been spoken about so widely, but by maximising control where you can, set pieces are a key part of that. And I think sometimes well, Kaya, you'd be able to explain it better, but I think sometimes maybe people think that the idea of set pieces, as well as their opinions on Arsenal, can't do this for so long in terms of the frustration that they are doing it, but also thinking that they're burning bright in terms of scoring from set pieces, and that will go away. And then when that goes away, they can't necessarily score from open play, but they have scored so consistently. Again, thinking about the form, this is sustainable, that they are being able to score from set pieces. And I've got the numbers in terms of corners. I saw this in another article today that Arsenal scored 37 goals from corners since the start of the 23-24 season, comfortably more than any other top 5 European side. The next is Borussia Mönchengladbach on 26. That going back to the 23-24 season is a big old sample size to be able to show this is sustainable, this is long term. Yeah,
particularly while Gabriel is fit. Last season when Gabriel got injured towards the end of the season, Arsenal's set piece scoring numbers, I believe, and their scoring numbers did tail off a bit. And their conceding numbers, I think, went up a bit because Gabriel is such an important part of everything they do when it comes to dead balls. But I think that the question people have, and I understand it to a point, is that in these kind of games, particularly recently that Arsenal have been winning and sort of trucking along in normal form, they have been getting a set piece to open the game up and break open the game. And I guess the question is, if they can't do that, do they have the players who can help them sort of break open a low block, which they face almost every week now? And that's the question. And thus far, they have found solutions in a lot of games. But set pieces, I think, like you say, it's a sustainable thing. And the implication that set pieces is just like this one monolith that can't change, or they're not various different things. Like a free kick that Arsenal scored from against Crystal Palace is completely different from a corner that they scored from against Fulham, for example. Like they're completely different arts in their own right, I would say, when it comes to set pieces. But yeah, the criticism, I understand it to a point, but like you say, it hasn't proved to be an issue yet for Arsenal. So, and
it keeps them in normal form.
Exactly, keeps them normal.
Well, like Bournemouth is a good example. I read they're on normal form and are second. But I was thinking, is this a bit like expected points in the way that you can sort of see where people should be? But measuring form is more like how well they're playing rather than what they're achieving. Because like, on expected points, like, you've got Man City are actually second at the moment, but they are not. Where are they actually in the table? Man City are 5th. So they're not quite hitting what they should be. Are they on form? Are they on bad form?
I'm also just trying to think of the count of how many times we said form in this first sort of 5 to 10 minutes. This is the thing as well with all of this. I mentioned it before, when you say about expected points, expected goals, expected goal difference, all the things that you're looking at, how a team could maybe be in both boxes over a longer period and how predictive that might be. This doesn't necessarily look at that because it's more outcome based, and you can luck your way to a couple of. I mean, Liverpool did that as well. If you think about the performances in the first 5 games, of which they won all of them, I think if you were to look at the underlying numbers, you'd say that actually this isn't sustainable because yes, they are the champions and they're winning every game, but you look at the underlyings and you thought, okay, this might go wrong quite quickly, and that was proven to be the case as well. So this is more kind of based on outcome, based on the points, whether the team has won, drawn or lost to see what's gone on in the short term, but more of the longer term predictive metrics, which maybe show whether a team's performances are more sustainable. I, as the data guy, am more of an advocate for more of the expected points, expected goal difference, and things like that.
So if I were to go to a lovely bar later and drown my brain to stop the noise, what one nugget of knowledge should we take away from this?
Ooh, good question.
Steve wrote it.
Good question, Steve.
That's what people say when they don't know the answer and they're buying for time. So
well, I kind of
I've thought that in the past as well.
I appreciate it. Thank
is
you.
it good?
Can't possibly mean it's a good question by Steve.
I also did slightly throw it at Mark, so I feel I was slightly last minute. Yeah.
I mean, this whole thing is designed to just be a bit of fun. I think sometimes with when people look at the league table, they'll look at obviously the points that are there, and they will look at just the either the grey, the green, or the red icons next to it to be like, okay, what are they? What's their most recent form in terms of just looking at their most recent results? But the idea of this is that it's designed to be relative to where the team is at. So
could you be out of form and still win games?
Probably.
What if you're playing
not.
really badly, but you're just like howking in corners?
No, because it's only based on outcome, based on the points that you've gained.
Yeah.
So you could be in. You could still be. This is the thing. Like Liverpool are still high up in the league table, but they are in poor form at the moment. And likewise, it comes back to the main point of it, I suppose. Now that I've had time to think about it, thank you, Steve. Just kick it around for a little bit. Is that Arsenal are top of the league and they are in normal form. I think that's the main thing that we should be speaking about, because it just shows how sustainable their output has been across a longer period, and they are built to mount another title challenge. Whereas Manchester City last season, Liverpool this season have ebbed and flowed far more, and they are less reliable, if you like, to be able to sustain it over a longer period. It looks like this could be Arsenal's season.
Congratulations, Arsenal. You've won the league. You happy, Kaya?
No, because you're doing this to me. I don't like it when people do this to me. I had these conversations all over the weekend, all over this week. I'm very animated, as you can tell. I'm trying not to get worked up about this because I don't like the pressure. I can't handle the pressure.
But you're not playing
but there's a reason I'm in a podcast studio and not on the pitch, because I can't handle the pressure.
I've not seen you play football, but I'd imagine there's a few.
It's one of many. And it's also, it's as well as Arsenal being in sustainable and normal form, it's the fact that Liverpool have dropped off and are in bad form, and City's normal form isn't taking them to the places where they probably should be. And it seems like the way Arsenal are doing it, as we said, is quite sustainable, and it scares me quite a lot, to be honest.
Because you're scared because they're doing well.
I'm scared because good things are happening.
They're doing well because they're doing normal. Yeah, well, that's an interesting position to be in, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is relevant to the way that, like, we're not saying that all they do is set pieces, but it is mostly all they do, and that's how they score the goals. So it's a sustainable way of creating chances, and the way they play was complete domination of the pitch. Like, you can't really get near them. I've read people talking about how you just can't get close to them. Really, Sander Berger, I think I saw a video of him saying they've got everything. You just can't really get at them. So that's how they're locking down games. They're pushing up. Teams can't get at them, and then they're able to manufacture set pieces, throw-ins, corners, and they're making the most use of them. And that is turned to this other conversation that people are having about set pieces and how it's changed the game. Is the Premier League ruined? That sort of thing. But we're going to touch on that, I think, on Monday's show, because John McKenzie is far more qualified to talk about this and wants to. You'll not be surprised to hear he has a lot to say. However, when planning this episode, we started talking about how set pieces are the new tempo. And then Steve decided he wasn't really sure what tempo is. Like, not completely. But luckily for you, listener, and me, Mark's been thinking about tempo recently. And therefore, you can educate us all. So what do you take tempo to mean within football? When we talk about tempo, what does that mean?
So, well, I'd be interested to get your guys' thoughts on this. just in terms of football language, I think of tempo as keeping a high degree of rhythm and energy to the game. I think rhythm is probably the main word that I'd use. I think we can come on to it in a second, but just how much that rhythm is probably reduced in the Premier League, at least this season. I did look at the Scottish Premiership, and I've got some numbers for you shortly, JJ.
I'd love to know.
But because you can look at different metrics to sort of measure tempo as a proxy. Within this piece, I'll touch upon it briefly, but I looked at tempo and how to actually measure that feeling of rhythm, because it is quite difficult to do. And the idea basically was when you have a sustained period of possession, a sequence of possession that lasts for longer than 10 seconds, to give a bit of an idea that it is a settled possession. What I did was essentially divide the number of passes by the time it takes for, the duration of the whole sequence by the number of passes.
Okay.
So if there's a lot of passes within that 10-second window, shall we say, or 20 seconds, just to extend it a little bit, if there's a lot of passes, then the ball's being moved very, very quickly.
And that's high tempo.
And that's high tempo. If there's within that 20-second period, there's 4 passes, then it's a player's receiving it, they're looking up, they're maybe passing it back to the centre-back, they're looking up, and it's really, really slow tempo. Or there's maybe not that many occasions of those sequences, long sequences for that team. So in which case the ball's sort of changing hands a lot, in which case they can't really build a rhythm, build a tempo.
Yeah.
So I tried to look at this in a bit of an objective way. Again, a bit of a thought experiment, similar to the form piece. And there were some interesting things. I think the main thing in terms of what we could maybe discuss here in terms of comparing leagues as well is maybe using a different metric, which is the volume of possessions. Now, possessions is just simply how often the ball changes hands, changes feet between the two teams. The more possessions you have, the more frenetic the game is. Because I have it, I play a long ball, then you have it, then you maybe play it out for a throw, then and it's just that no one's really having a long sequence of possession. It's just going back and forth between the two teams. This is where I think it might be interesting to talk about the league differences and where you maybe think the Scottish Premiership stands.
So you have a list, so we could put them in order of what we think the highest tempo league is.
So I have got the top 5 European leagues and the Scottish Premiership.
Uh-huh.
So you could say the top 6 European leagues. That's your discretion.
I think you could, yeah, and that would be normal.
Yeah. So in terms of the volume of possessions, so more possessions being the number's almost irrelevant, but we can order it. But the more possessions being indicative of a more frenetic game. Who's high, who's low?
I would say Scottish is going to be first.
Yeah, that'd be my guess too. Can't keep the ball.
It's first, yeah.
Yes! See, it's fun.
First.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah, 180 possessions per game. So the ball changes.
That sounds like a lot, but what does that compare to Spain, for example?
Spain is 4th, which there's not too much.
Out of 5.
Out of 6.
Out of 6, sorry. Yeah.
4th out of 6, 166 per game. So the differences aren't huge. But then
Oh.
you aggregate that across, this is per game. So you aggregate that across, the course of a season.
Yeah.
And it does, each team would have far fewer possessions or far more when extrapolated across the course of a season. But it does speak to what you said before about the Scottish Premiership being quite frenetic, quite
Very
mad.
fast tempo.
Yeah.
People don't expect it when they go to Scotland, I think. I've not talked to any players actually from England that have asked them that question, but when they go up, they think it's going to be really easy, but you don't get any time on the ball, like you just don't get time, which is not ideal. But I wonder what leagues you do get time in. Could we guess the rest of them then? What the slowest and the fastest?
Yeah, let's carry on. So we've got first, we've got 4th.
Scotland is the fastest, therefore the best.
Oh, excuse me as well. I've got the Championship included in here.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
That's going to be...
So I've got 7.
The top 7.
Top 7.
Okay.
The old top 7
The Championship
as we know
6.
it.
Okay, I'm going to guess the Bundesliga is second for most changes of possession.
I'm going to guess Championship.
To be fair, this is really good. So Championship is second,
Hey.
and then it's Bundesliga.
Ah, okay.
So you're both on the money there, which is really interesting.
But who's
actually.
more on the money?
You were more on the money.
That's right.
But it's interesting that, your eye test is really matching what's going on here. It does show that how we perceive each game, each league is borne out in the numbers. So we've got the top...
Good to know I'm doing something right.
Yeah, correct. We've got the top 4 then, I guess. Scottish Premiership, English Championship, German Bundesliga, Spanish La Liga. I don't know why I'm including all the countries as well. Everyone knows this. Then 5th, 6th and 7th, please.
So remaining is the Italian Serie A,
Yep.
the French Liga, and the English Premier League.
Yes.
So Italy's got to be bottom. It's got to be 7th.
Italy is bottom.
Yeah.
But
This is good.
I think France and England, this is really hard
That
to
is
pick
hard.
this. We've got to get this right, otherwise
so little in it as well.
Oh
we
my
both...
God.
Oh, geez, I don't know. I would have thought of a couple of seasons. Is it from this season? Or
Yeah,
from...
this is just this season, yeah.
The English Premier League is quite... I don't watch enough French Ligue 1 to know the difference.
And bearing in mind that some people very negatively call Ligue 1 the Farmers' League as well.
Yeah.
You know, so
Do
there's a
farmers have
perception.
quick tempo? That's the question.
I think there's more counter-attacking transitional stuff in France. I'm going to say
Yeah.
England is 6th.
I back it.
England is 5th.
No!
I think if we're going to focus on the Premier League, or return to the Premier League, I do think this is really interesting just in terms of the volume of possessions per game this season and last season, actually, which shows that the trend was kind of always, was going in this direction, is 163 possessions per game in the Premier League this season.
Uh-huh.
But you go back to the 2018-19 season and it was 194. So the idea, which speaks to the main crux of what we're saying here in terms of it's becoming a little bit more slower paced because there's so many stoppages in the game. If you as Arsenal had the ball, the other team didn't have possession, but they maybe headed it out for a throw in, you still retain possession there from this.
Is 18-19, sorry to cut across you, is 18-19 the year that the short goal kicks rule came in?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, I think it was.
I was just wondering that in terms of because I would guess long goal kicks leads to more changes of possession, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, and I often with a few data points like this, there's often like a lag between when the rule sort of comes into operation and then when it's actually borne out in the data. But I think that is a really good point. But the idea being that, let's say Arsenal play a long ball, it gets headed out for a throw in, and then you take that throw in. That whole time you've had that same possession because the opposition haven't, yes, they've headed it and they've touched it, but they've not actually had sustained possession. Okay. So it kind of speaks to the point that there's fewer possessions in the game now because basically teams are holding onto the ball for longer by having a longer time taking goal kicks, a longer time taking throw-ins, and there's less opportunity for the other team to have it because there's so much dead time basically within the game.
So that would include time when ball isn't in play. So let's say the 30 seconds they're taking to take a throw-in would all count as the same.
Well, it's eating up into the game's overall opportunity for the other team to have it, I suppose. So the idea basically being that it's becoming I was going to say less and less frenetic, basically, which is interesting compared to Scotland, which is as frenetic as it's ever been.
Well, speaking of dead time and possessions, why do you think there were so many possession and paranormal cases in the 70s and the 80s, but there's not many ever since then? There was loads back then. People be saying they were possessed.
Kaya, I'll leave that one to you.
I wonder if it's a case of we've become much more cynical as a people because of social media. I think Gen Z and Generation Alpha.
Well, social media wasn't until, I would say, the 90s.
Yeah.
So maybe
there's like a thing that Gen Alpha and Gen Z are supposed to be a lot more cynical just as a people.
And that's why there's no more ghosts.
I would guess they're less inclined to believe because seeing a ghost requires a level of belief, right?
I will put this in there. In the 80s, I do believe the film Ghostbusters came out. That might link it.
That makes sense.
That's like the goal kick rule changing. Like there's a lag from when Ghostbusters happens, and then eventually, you only see it in the data years after.
Exactly.
Until the sequel.
Expected Ghost has dropped, is it?
Yes.
Yes, Expected Ghost has dropped. I've not seen a ghost. You've seen a ghost before?
I went to see, in year 7, when I was 11 years old, I went to see The Woman in Black on stage, which is, for people who don't know, it's a terrifying ghost story. It's one of, I think, the oldest running theatre shows in London. And she sort of, if it was indeed a character who was playing her, because there's only 3 people in the play, and the Woman in Black is one of them, and only 2 actors come out at the end to bow, and the Woman in Black's face just sort of appears at the end, and you don't know if she's real or not. And I was sat in the aisle seat, and there's a scene sort of, the Woman in Black sort of comes down the aisle, and her dress sort of brushed my arm. And ever since then, I've been slightly scared. And that evening, my dad, so they dropped us off we got a coach back from the theatre to my school, and parents all came and picked us up from the school. And my dad had got the pickup time wrong, so I was sort of left on my own for quite a long time. It was a very windy night, swirling leaves and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, if there was a night for me to believe in ghosts, that was it. And I don't know if I've seen one, but I'm definitely terrified of the potential to have seen one. So I don't know if that answers your question. I've just traumatized myself. I don't know.
It was a very vivid story. You're still harboring a lot.
I thought he told that well. I felt the things. Good storytelling.
Thanks, man.
No wonder you write such good scripts.
some people might disagree.
Well, not in this room, but let's find more ways to agree or disagree with Mark, because you wrote in your this thing we're talking about tempo and set pieces. So Bournemouth were top of the Premier League by this measure last season, volume of possession. So Bournemouth were top of the Premier League by this measure last season. Their games had 91.4 possessions per 90 minutes, because Andoni Iraola's aggressive transitional playing style meant chaos is embraced rather than shirked. I like that language. By contrast, Man City averaged the lowest volume of possessions, so no ghosts for them. As manager, Guardiola looks to minimise uncertainty wherever humanly possible.
Humanly? Ooh.
Yeah.
You've been writing ghost stories this whole time.
Paranormally possible to raise the tempo.
Yeah.
So you need to explain a graph from last season where Bournemouth are at a certain, Man City are at a certain point versus Nottingham Forest at a certain point.
Yeah, I suppose rather than necessarily explaining the graph, I think it is interesting to speak about Manchester City, because this was about the possessions, which again, hopefully everyone's on the same page with this now. And that's slightly different from when I then introduced the tempo thing that I mentioned before in terms of time per pass. But the possessions thing I think is interesting. But it's also interesting in the context of Manchester City this season, because it feels like, and it was about January, I think, at the start of this year, where Pep Guardiola said that the way that he plays and the way that the league is going is to embrace chaos a little bit more. I think he said you got to rise to the rhythm a little bit more, which I think I included in this piece as well, because rhythm, coming back to that word, is that you can't exhibit or exert the exact same amount of control as he maybe was able to in previous seasons. Because everyone is now a disruptor, and with man marking structures, you're able to actually.
Do you think it's that with Man City, or do you think it's their players are just different to what they used to have? I'm not saying they're not as good, but
well, I think the way that he's recruited has meant that there's probably stronger 1v1 players, knowing that if there's going to be a man marking structure for the opposition, then you need to be able to wriggle out of that, and using more of a positional game means that teams aren't going to take the bait quite in the same way. So I think he's prepared his squad to be less kind of slower tempo. Maybe he's not going to suddenly become Andoni Iraola in terms of just completely embracing the chaos, but I do think there's a bit of a shift towards that. And again, coming back to Arsenal, I'd probably say the willingness to maybe go long, knowing that you're not always going to retain possession ever so slightly more. Again, not to the other extreme, but even with Joke's making runs in behind, not always finding him, but maybe doing it a little bit more.
Yeah, and just back to what you were saying about Man City, I think what's interesting about them, and what I found really interesting reading the piece, and I should say that we're converting the piece into a video for Tifo, so if you talk about good scripts, it's because I ripped them off Mark, that's why. But the thing that stood out to me, particularly with City, that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of, obviously you think of like Rodri, I know he was injured for last season, but Kovacic and even Foden, or even Bernardo Silva, those kind of players who are obviously technically fantastic and can slow and speed up the tempo, and even Nico Gonzalez, who came in the second half of the season. But also players who slow down the tempo are the likes of Jack Grealish or Jeremy Doku, who like wingers who hold on to the ball for quite a long time on the outside. And it does feel like the way Pep sort of has in the past, at least, is built up his footballers is sort of get the ball up, try and pass it around and around the box, and give it to a winger like Doku, who may stand up as fullback and try and take them one-on-one, but they may also pass it backwards and keep the ball, but they'll take quite a long time to do whatever they decide to do. Whereas the Bournemouth wingers are a bit more just like, go for it. And that does feel like that raises the tempo. And a bit more, like you say, with the go for it sort of attitude, in the league generally becoming more direct. And Arsenal are a decent example of it, in the sense that, they're more willing to go direct, and teams are more willing to go direct. And it's interesting this season, at the start, it feels like everyone kind of got the same memo, pretty much, maybe except for Liverpool, about the fact the league is going to become way more direct, either sink or swim kind of thing. And the tempo, I'd be interested to see if we can get the data at the end of this about whether the tempo will have increased or decreased at the end of this season, because obviously set pieces, if we said, slow it down, but the general sort of playing style does feel like it's sped it up a bit. So it's an interesting sort of dichotomy.
Disrupting tempo as well is probably a thing that a lot of managers will try and work out what to do. So you mean like Newcastle, I think I read last season, or is it maybe 2 seasons ago, had the ball and play the least of the Premier League. I'm skewing that quote, whatever it was, but they're really intense and fast. So you get really high tempo, but with long delays in between. So it's like playing thrash punk. It's like playing double time drums or something like that. But then you have to have breaks in between songs. Especially like the Hives. The Hives, like, they power through for a few songs. Then they start having quite a few breaks in between, or Pele starts going around and talking to everyone for ages. I think it's probably because they're knackered.
That's so true. It's a tactic.
So it's the same. So I think of football like music an awful lot, and I sort of see the same things. And I don't remember who said this, but I watched or heard or read someone say that they can go to certain training grounds, they can tell if the training's going well or not, because you can hear like the rhythm of the rondo, or the way players are playing it, they hit the thwack of the ball. So like that noise, you can tell from the sound what's going on. It's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, massively. I think that the Newcastle example is a really good one, actually, because we did a sort of season review at the end of last season, and we were able to get our hands on physical metrics as well as event metrics, and they basically had the highest share of time sprinting in possession and out of possession as well. Often there'll be kind of a bit more one or the other, but it does speak to the idea that they are just so intense all the time when they are able to. So if again, it comes back to how much control you can have with set pieces as well.
Yeah.
At the times where you do have control, because the game is so random, there's not too many opportunities to have control. So at the time you do have control, and the goalkeeper does make, even though this season you're only allowed 8 seconds to retain the ball as a goalkeeper, in those sorts of bits in between when the game is sort of shutting down, maximizing that element of control, I was going to say indirectly, it directly allows you to then exert or impose the style of play that you want to. And Newcastle are a really good example of that.
There was something else I just thought of that maybe is interesting. Another sort of music comparison. So if you are putting an album together or something like that, certain bands will need big hits to make sure they guarantee themselves. The Beatles would keep songs behind for the next album, so they definitely have hits going on. And those are almost like your set pieces, like guaranteed hits. But you can get quite cynical with that, and then you start seeing some bands have like a couple of hits that are clearly written specifically to appeal to a wider audience, and those are the big hits, the guarantee ones. But then you can't have constant tempo all the way through. You've got to have variation within an album, same way you would in a game or a season. So you might see at certain parts of the season teams have a certain tempo and then they change it at others. But it might also be linked to their form, or whether they're normal, good or bad.
That's a good point. I definitely agree with the album thing. That I always say about like my favorite albums are ones that have like light and shade, where you can see where it's kind of going.
Name one.
I'd say I'm a big Arctic Monkeys fan, so AM probably has that kind of up and down quite a bit. There's somewhere in the middle where Mad Sounds comes along, it just sort of calms you down a little bit, and then it kind of ramps up again. So I'd probably go with that one.
I went and saw Haim last night.
So did I.
Were you there as well?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I would have normally seen you, given both of our height. I was going to use Haim as an example of their new album, which I do really like, and it had a heavier sound than I thought from listening to the album.
Yes.
But I thought their new album, this is why I was deliberating, you probably noticed the pause, their new album didn't have as much light and shade.
I agree. And it felt like the tempo of the crowd certainly slowed when maybe they played their newer songs as opposed to the hits that everyone knows. That felt like it sped the tempo up quite a lot.
You've got to get your gig set list right.
Exactly.
So true.
You've got to manage the tempo and the feel and the energy. It's really important. I think it's what managers do with games as well. But
should we do let's 6 music chalk? Should we it's
interesting.
That's the tempo. I agree, but now it's done.
I'm just segueing onto it. But like in a really good album or a gig, you don't have any filler. It's all killer. But with things like throw-ins in football, that slows things down an awful lot. And how about, Steve writes, would pausing the play, as they do in other sports, like NFL, I think they do it, if they did that in football, would that give fans more game time back? Or would they expect people to play at this mad tempo?
Like a stop clock, essentially. So
like the play clock stops.
I feel like it technically would, but then people would play for they would deliberately make those pauses even longer to slow down any sort of momentum that a team is building. So like if you were allowed a throw in to be 5 minutes of build up, teams would definitely do that. And I think this is my argument against like football should have a clock that pauses every time the ball goes out of play, like rugby or NFL or those kind of sports, is that it wouldn't be a case of you getting the maximum linear number of minutes. Like you would have massive breaks in between, and probably there would be companies wanting to put adverts in between all of those little breaks, like a set piece little advert. I think it would be the death of football. Honestly.
So actually the restriction of time, because there's some discussion at the moment, isn't there, at time recording, of restricting the time you're allowed to take on a throw.
Yeah.
That being the better way around.
I think I'm in favour of that, which as an Arsenal fan is slightly hypocritical, but yes.
That comes with its own perils as well. I was speaking to Nick Miller in the office about that, where if you tried to do it, basically if the ball went out for a throw and then you wanted to make a substitution, could you then make the substitution? Because if you have to throw the ball within 8 seconds of it going out of play, for example, someone's got to sprint off the field and sprint on really quickly, and that just doesn't work as well. So do you make acceptances for those situations? Maybe.
Probably.
But then do you then start to then gamify the use of substitutions to try and think, okay, if it's a really lucrative throw-in, we'll make the substitution now.
Yeah.
I think there's opportunity for even more chaos there.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, Mark, tempo varies based on position too, doesn't it? Where has the highest tempo? Who is the lowest?
So I think this is quite interesting as well. It speaks to what you said before, Kaya, in terms of wingers are their role. I think we've spoken about this before, or maybe I've heard you say it in terms of what someone in a band's role is compared to a player on a team. And the winger's role is to slow the tempo down at maybe quite some pace, but then speed it up at the same sort of pace. So I think it's interesting to look at the differences.
Like, it could be any number of drummers that I know.
Exactly, yeah. But wingers and goalkeepers, and I suppose centre-backs included within that, have the sort of the slowest tempo because they are designed to have control in different areas of the pitch. Goalkeepers at the moment, especially, or maybe more so last season than this season, is to maybe bait the press, bring the opposition onto them to create spaces elsewhere. They have the slowest tempo in terms of position. Centre-backs for a similar reason. But wingers are not too far behind, but for the reason that the sort of tactical purpose of, again, bringing the opposition towards them, slowing the pace down, only to then burst into life, compared to the tempo needs to be at its highest within the centre of the pitch. Basically, you sort of see it kind of a bit of a U shape, that in the middle of the pitch, the tempo has to be as quick as it can possibly be in the middle, because you've just got bodies all around you, so you need to be able to pop it off really quickly. And that's why you see the best players, the best midfielders, are those who can retain the ball under pressure and release the ball into space when they have players coming from all different angles.
And I guess if you don't have those players in the midfield, you're going to struggle.
Yeah, to
get your tempo right.
Yeah.
What was the donut of doom? Was it that
something like that
you said about the
some fool said
horseshoe of death or whatever it was?
That's right. Yeah. Well, there we go. We've solved it. We know what tempo is now.
Completed it, mate.
Thank you. Let's move on and have a break. My God, what a break that was! The amount of things we did in that break. Do you remember that?
So much. I'll
remember that always. But now we're going to talk about footedness and feet in footballers. The ambipedal, that's how you say it, isn't it? Ambipedal?
Ambipedal feels right.
If you will, stars such as Santi Cazorla or John Terry. I don't remember him being two-footed. Was he very two-footed?
Yeah, he'd play a lot of diags with his left, wouldn't he?
Oh, it's very good. I remember that. But Santi Cazorla, I do remember taking corners with both feet and penalties. They're very memorable due to their rarity. It's an unusual quirk of elite-level football that so many players are quite one-footed. Or is it? That's what we're going to decide. So, Mark, is being heavily one-footed in elite football, especially, actually a bad thing?
I do think this is a really interesting question. Before I do go on to that, just because you said about John Terry and Santi Cazorla, do you know the two Premier League players who have scored a penalty with both feet, with either foot?
Right now, playing now, or
in Premier League history?
Oh, good. No, I don't.
I would guess like Letizia, because he took a lot of penalties.
I could be wrong. It might have changed, but I think it was Obafemi Martins and Bobby Zamora.
Is that right?
Yeah, for those interested.
Would they change their run up so the goalkeeper would know which foot they're going to use? Like, we did it once.
I don't think I actually saw. I don't think I've seen the penalties.
How do you know they happened then?
It's true. Yeah, it's like a tree. I don't know whether it was in the same game even as well. But that is a fact that I am just willing to leave out there. And then no further questions, Your Honour. But to answer your main question, is it a bad thing? I'd be interested to see what you guys think of this, because I speak to Steve about it before. Whether it applies to us, your five-a-side team, your Sunday League team, or an elite Premier League player, you'll always have a stronger foot and a weaker foot. It's just that Declan Rice's weaker foot is 10 times better than my stronger foot. But in relative terms, it makes more sense for him to use his stronger foot, because the accuracy with which he can play a pass is probably, there's millimetres in it with his stronger foot. But with his weaker foot, there's probably centimetres in it, which he's still elite. However, at that level, the difference between centimetres is the difference between playing the pass and it becoming an assist or it running out of play. So I almost don't know, is it better to retain your stronger foot and double down on your strengths, or try and improve on your weaknesses?
I mean, speaking as someone who has a weak foot and a weaker foot, that is an issue I've struggled with many a time. I've played five-a-side with you, Mark, and you have multiple strong feet, which is very impressive. But I think what it does for you is it unlocks a lot of possibilities on the pitch, right? It means you're never truly boxed in if you can use both feet. And an interesting thing, there was a piece that I was reading to sort of prepare for this by Anantia, and the thing that he was pointing out, it was about Antoine Semenyo, who is a fantastically two-footed player. And it also, as well as on the ball, opening up so many different possibilities for you, off the ball is quite useful as well, because it means you can defend and you can block sort of passes and shots with different feet. And you're not sort of, if you're, the first thing you're sort of taught as a defender, not that I'm a good one, is to sort of try and show the attacker onto their weak foot and try and get them onto your strong foot when you're trying to tackle them. And if you're two-footed, that doesn't matter so much. You can defend them in various different ways. So yeah, I would argue that it's much better to be diverse and two-footed than to just have one really strong foot. But
what if you're Roberto Carlos?
Exactly.
It depends on the position, doesn't it? In that regard, because if you are going back to the tempo thing, if you're able to play it, if the ball's coming in from a certain angle and you've got just as much ability on your left foot to pop it off, then that's more beneficial. But if you are Roberto Carlos, you're playing as a fullback, if you're playing, I was going to say playing as an inverted winger, it would be good to be able to go both ways in that regard.
I think that's what, sorry to cut across you again, but Noni Madueke and Bukayo Saka were, like, Noni Madueke in particular was signed for Arsenal because he's good at going both ways, and Bukayo Saka has really worked on that in recent years for sure.
Yeah, and the piece that I'm in the process of writing at the moment is that more from a shot perspective, and I think the point still remains is that once you're in an area where you can shoot, you don't want to be shooting from sort of all angles. But if you're, let's say, in the width of the penalty area, the fact that you could shuffle it onto your left or shuffle it onto your right then just puts so much doubt in the mind of the defender. And all you need really at the elite level is a yard. It just shows that you can do it with the same degree of accuracy, and Semenyo is the example of that. Again, fun fact, there's no player who's had more non-penalty shots since the start of last season than Antoine Semenyo. He's had more shots than Haaland, Salah, Cole Palmer. And I think that's because he's so two-footed. There's no angle that's off limits. So I'm going to include
that's
that
interesting.
as well.
I thought I was immediately thinking that it's because a lot of people talk about how he's not really the same sort of academy learned player that a lot of players are. Yeah. So that he's got a different take on it. So he might try things that you're not drilled into. If your education is that this is what you do because this is how you're supposed to do it, and you get Semenyo's a bit of a wild card really at times. He's so much fun to watch. So then he just might find solutions that others hadn't thought of.
Yeah, that's true. Unpredictable. Yeah, that's a good point.
And the two-footedness allows you to be better at that as well. So I guess that kind of must add to it. Surely being two-footed is the best because you can do everything. Like,
yeah, I'm probably trying to justify it. I mean, you just work on your strengths. But
I feel like if you're really left-footed, I feel like that's fine. But if you're really right-footed, it's not. Why is that?
Is it just the availability of people who are left-footed and people who are right-footed? Yeah. I think it's just maybe a bit of a misnomer, but I think people who are left-footed are very left-footed. But I've never just feel like that's the case. I'm a data guy. I should really.
That may be because they're sort of earlier on in their career kind of like pushed over to the left-hand side of the pitch or left back or made to use it or put in deliveries with their left foot or that kind of stuff because it's rarer. So you sort of have to work on it. I don't know.
So you're saying lefties are better? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, why not?
I'd agree with that.
Better shots. Well, isn't it interesting then to bring it back round once again to Arsenal because they've got loads of left-footed players, and it must be deliberate because they've got so many now on that team. I think I saw you can name like an 11 of left-footed players, which I don't think is that normal, is it?
That's got to be very rare. Yeah, so rare. Again, you think of a passing angles. It's good to have a good blend. I think Arsenal have got a good blend in that regard. Yeah.
Would it affect? So is that what you're saying with defending? Do we have to defend, right? So if you learn to defend a certain way, you're mostly probably playing against right footers. That must be the majority. Would you then gain some sort of small advantage by having left-footed players play against you?
Well, probably. And there's like been games where managers have put a right-footed fullback at left back so that they can deal with a winger coming inside to counteract that. So they're tackling on their stronger foot. So yeah, definitely an advantage there. I
think with Arsenal as well, it's interesting that it was against Liverpool, wasn't it, where Odegaard and Saka were injured, if I'm not mistaken. And that was the first time that season for a long while that Arsenal took out-swinging corners. Yeah. Again, you can't talk about Arsenal without set pieces. But I did think that was interesting as well, that they were kind of forced into out-swinging corners. And then obviously when they returned, they went back to in-swinging corners. So it wasn't that they were trying to do something new against Liverpool. It was that they didn't have the left-footed players to have that delivery to try and threaten in that way. And of course, they didn't score from it.
Yeah, they didn't. And that was an issue on the day.
That was this season, wasn't it? The 1-0 defeat to Liverpool.
Yes, that was the one. Declan
Yeah.
Rice was taking loads of outswingers. I think, there's many outswingers in that game as they'd taken the whole previous 2 seasons or something.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, something stupid like that.
And they didn't quite trust. I hadn't realised that Madueke, because who's left-footed, could take them by that point. If I recall.
Yeah,
correctly.
hadn't realised he had a left foot. Somehow.
Good recruitment.
Yeah.
In the case of Liverpool, so let's just move on from Arsenal. So Liverpool, their forwards, they play, not wrong-footed, but they play left-footed, obviously Salah on the right-hand side and Gakpo right-footed off the left. And if they're playing a 4-2-4, you'd probably think normally you'd have those 2 players as wingers, which would normally mean you want the stronger foot on that side so you can go on the outside of players. Do you think that's what they should do? Is it work? Is it the way that Slot wants to play with them? Is it a problem having a left-footed and right-footed in those positions?
I don't think it was last season because Liverpool were really good at back post crosses, and it would be the opposite side winger who would basically lock off the back post, and then whoever crossed it, they'd cut in onto their stronger foot, curl it to the back post, and Liverpool scored loads of really good back post goals as a consequence. Because they've got more of a sort of focal point in the middle this season. For a lot of the season, it did change, but it was Luis Diaz who was kind of playing as a bit of a false 9, and he wasn't really spearheading the attack, so he wasn't the one attacking crosses. Whereas this season, obviously, to varying degrees, it's Hugo Ekitike and Alexander Isak, and they do thrive off, as among many other things in terms of their attributes, they do thrive off crosses as any striker does as well, which makes me think actually you maybe want more conventional crosses on sort of stronger foot. The reason I think this is interesting as well is because, granted, it wasn't any of them who actually finished the chance, but Florian Wirtz played on the right side of a 4-4-2 against Eintracht Frankfurt in the Champions League. And it was his cross with his right foot, just a nice simple pass, perfectly in the path of Cody Gakpo to finish, that felt that if that was Mo Salah in that situation, you would have just imagined that he would have cut onto his left foot and still played it, and then the passing angles kind of go again. And I think this is interesting from the perspective of Alexander Isak, especially because he thrived off crosses from same-side wingers in Jacob Murphy last season, scored so many from him providing those chances. And I think from a tactical perspective, if you got someone cutting onto their stronger foot and then playing it to the back post and you're maybe trying to get knockdowns, that's completely different from someone approaching onto the play and playing it first time across. And as a striker, you can then make your run in a conventional way and know that the ball's going to arrive, rather than Salah and Gakpo, for example, trying to take on their man before then crossing it in, and then by the time they've done it, the chance is gone.
Well, I wonder whether we might start seeing more outside wingers, like strong-footed wingers on their side in the Premier League, because if you can get the chances to throw a cross in like that, it's sort of like set piece almost.
Yeah,
you can manufacture those situations, and so maybe you could play Chiesa on that side with the right, which is, I think they've done it a couple of times.
Yeah, and Frimpong has been another one that they've spoken about, and that test will probably happen, or that experiment will happen when Mohamed Salah's at the AFCON. In the winter, so that they've pretty much got to do it in terms of a right footer on that side. So it probably will be Chiesa or Frimpong.
And it was proved to be effective in the Premier League last. Like Forest did it really well. I know Hudson-Odoi cut in on his right, but like Anthony Elanga is another 2-footed player who could go and put in crosses, like just classic sort of chalk on your boots winger kind of thing. And it worked really well for Chris Wood last season. So it's an effective tactic. And now that maybe Sean Dyche is back in the Premier League, maybe we'll see a bit more of that at Forest. I don't know. Maybe
we will. But something we probably won't see with Sean Dyche is a game of footsie. Steve has written down footsie with Mark Carey.
Yes. No further questions. I think we should just crack on.
The audience can't see under the table. Yeah.
This is a corporate environment with HR. Let me remind you of this first. But there is a time to play a game. Mark, what is going on?
So, as part of this piece that I am actually still in the process of writing, I thought I'd use some of the data that I pulled to have a game with you guys. So what I've done is look at, this is only shots based, so I didn't have the data from every pass, every action, but this is players since the start of last season in the Premier League and what foot they shoot with. And I've done this as a share of all their shots, how many are with their left foot, how many with their right foot as a share. Yeah. So what I was going to ask you was, can you name me, we're going to go left foot first, then we'll go right foot, and then I want to see if you guys can guess or work out who is the most 2-footed essentially in their shots. So we're going to start with left foot. The top 5 players who have the highest share of shots with their left foot. So who's very left-footed in their
Mo Salah
shots? So Mo Salah is number 9 on the list in terms of the share of shots. 85% of his shots were with his left foot.
Højlund,
not Haaland.
Yeah.
Højlund is not in the top 20.
Okay.
I'll take
Haaland.
Haaland then.
No, to be fair, he's number 10.
Ah.
So I was just checking, actually, just buying myself some time as I look at the list.
What? Someone who feels like he shoots from his left all the time and never on his right. Phil Foden.
Phil Foden is number 2.
Ooh.
91% of his
Wow.
shots were with his left foot, or have been since the start of last season. There's another very obvious one, number 1. Very left-footed player, not a striker, but a forward.
I can't remember any players. Brian Mbumo?
He's 14th on the list, 75%. He's not in the top 5. A couple of these are tricky, but number 1, you guys will definitely get.
Give us some clues so we're not doing dead air.
Very left-footed player, creative player. Could say he carries the team at times since the start of last season, or even going
English.
further back.
Saka?
English. No, not Saka. Carries the team. It's this player FC at times for a team who has done well. I'm just going to start saying more and more that
Keep going.
literally the names. For a team who has tried to and has successfully got into Europe, you might say they're world champions.
Cole Palmer.
Cole Palmer is number 1
Oh.
with 92% of his shots with his left foot.
Is that right?
Now, if you didn't get Palmer, there is no point in me getting you to guess 3, 4, and 5 because number 3 is Harry Wilson.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I was going to say him.
exactly. I thought Foden and Palmer might be fine. And of course, you'd have said Marcus Tavernier as number 4
Yes.
Wow.
with 89%. And Amad Diallo, 89%
That does
as
make
well,
sense, actually, yeah.
which makes sense. Martin
Yeah.
Odegaard in 6th, just for
Okay.
the Arsenal fans there.
They need
But
some more, yeah.
They were the very left-footed players. I thought they'd be good. To be fair, now right-footed is going to be tricky for you.
Oh, my gosh.
Can you? Because there's a lot of them. Can you give me some names? Give me some names. Who's
It's two. They're
very
all right-footed, though.
But who's very right-footed?
I don't know.
in this
Mateta.
case? Mateta's not actually. No, but it's a good one. I actually spoke about this player cutting inside onto his stronger foot a lot, and it's sometimes being frustrating when you're crossing the ball. When we were talking about how Mo Salah on the right,
Cody Gakpo.
Cody Gakpo is top of the bill.
Yay.
Is that right?
Very, very right-footed.
That's so interesting of how he's having to play for Liverpool this season. isn't
Yeah. Especially because before that he was playing a bit more of a fluid, sometimes false nine.
I mean, I
as
still
well.
see him as like more of a central forward, really, Gakpo. But yeah, it's interesting.
Which I think all of this is interesting is like how much of it is a product of the position that you're playing and how much of it is a product of, okay,
Yes,
if
of course.
I were in a different position, a bit more central, I could maybe go onto either foot. Another team on the rise, a sleeping giant, you might say.
Bruno Fernandes.
Bruno Fernandes is number 5 on the list.
Mateus Cunha.
Mateus Cunha is number 3 on the list. I will fill in the gaps for the top 5. We've got Anthony Gordon. I feel like I'm doing top of the pops. And at 4, we've got Anthony Gordon at 84% as well. There's not much
That's
to choose
interesting.
between
I
these.
don't know why in my head I would have thought of him as a relatively two-footed player because he plays on the left and the right for Newcastle.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is
Maybe his
interesting.
shooting foot is different to his ball-touching foot.
Yes.
That is true because it is just shooting, so it just shows the preference. And I do think this is interesting. I'm going to include this in the piece as well. As Anthony Gordon would probably take a lot of shots from outside the box as well. And I think that there's research to show that there's a real higher preference for your dominant foot outside the box, less so inside the box because the
makes
ball's
sense, I
kind of
feel
pinballing
like.
around
Yeah.
and you might have to just adjust your body.
Also, you can get more power, I presume, on your stronger foot,
Also
right?
true.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting. In at 2, we have Justin Kluivert, which not confused me, but surprised me. 86% with his right foot.
Interesting.
Do we have time,
Yeah.
Steve, for two-footed players?
Yeah. It's interesting that on both sides, Bournemouth wingers, quite singular, like in their kind of, Tavernier on one side, Kluivert on the other. Both
That
quite
is
similar.
true. And it's a very good clue for the next part of the game. Because who is the most two-footed?
It's got to be
Of-
Semenyo after all the chat we've been having, right?
Yeah, Semenyo is, checks notes, Semenyo is 54% with his left, which is really close to like 50-50, quick maths.
It's 4 away.
And 46% with his right. His now former teammate is pretty similar as well. He's since left Bournemouth, but another forward who can play on both wings actually, since gone to Brentford.
Oh, Carvalho.
Dango.
No,
Ouattara.
Dango Ouattara is very, very close. 55% left, 45% on his right. And then there's someone who has since left the Premier League, gone to play in MLS, who is known to be a two-footed striker of the ball in Premier League history. Played for years and years.
The brilliant thing about this as well is that you guys spoke about him before the recording as well.
Oh, you might have, yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, I don't know.
A very two-footed player in North London.
Son Heung-min.
Son Heung-min is 44% with his left, 56%.
Oh, that's good.
With his right. So those are the most two-footed players. And at their end of my game.
That was a fun
Thank
game.
you for playing, everybody.
I thank you for the game, Mark. I'll always remember it.
Now for the real footsie. No, sorry. Inappropriate.
Nothing was cut. Well, I think that's actually all that we have time to talk about today. Some very interesting things there. Thank you very much for bringing all this information, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, everybody.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. Thank you, Kaya.
Thank you. I'm off to wash my feet now. Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay, something was cut there.
Sorry.
Okay. Thanks to Steve for putting the podcast together, and thank you, listeners and viewers. The podcast will be back on Monday. I will be there, and so will Kaya, and so will John Mackenzie. See you then.